This is straight off the dome, unlike my other videos that have hours of preparation and rehearsal and are carefully scripted. This is even more improvised than usual. But I just had a comment in the chat talking about dealing with the level of hate on YouTube, on the internet, in being a vegan, etc., etc. Obviously, this is an issue that comes up again and again. It ain't never going to go away. Like I said a long time ago, I think that some of the hate and animosity and competitive spirit is just a feature of the genre. In the same way that someone might have complained in the early 1980s that hip-hop music was just going through a phase in which rappers hated one another, insulted one another, etc. At some point, you got to realize it's not a phase. It's just a feature of the genre. Hip-hop music, one element of it, not the whole game, not the whole genre, one element of it is this competitive, insulting thing that goes on where rappers hate other rappers, and even when they don't hate other rappers, they pretend to hate other rappers. It is a feature of the genre. Some genres of music are like that, and some are not. I do not remember jazz music having that same feature. I do not remember, the Four Tops getting into it with, other barbershop quartets. But I don't know. Maybe they did, and that stuff just wasn't front and center. Maybe that stuff was just kept below the surface in that industry and wasn't up front the way it is in hip-hop music. But anyway, it is a feature of the genre. It is something I cope with. And something I've seen lately, a whole lot of the best people, in the game have already quit. They've already closed down their YouTube channels. They already shut down shop and quit. I've seen that happen a whole bunch of times. I could name names. But hey, one you can still enjoy on my channel. Remember American Unicorn? She quit, and she was very unusual because she was actually a religious conservative. She believed in no sex before marriage and other really kinky stuff like that. And she was out here talking about veganism from her perspective. That was very different from everyone else's perspective. She shut down and closed her YouTube channel. Zarya, I have a over 1 hour podcast with Zarya that I'm always promoting. I think it's called The Agony of Activism. Still great video on my channel. She closed down her YouTube and moved on. I've talked to her since then. A lot of the best people really shut down entirely. But another thing that's happening that I see going on right now is people, of course, some people are saying they're going to quit and they're liars. They're faking you out. They're just trying to get something from the audience. They don't really quit. But some people are actually, they're quitting in principle, but they're keeping their channels up. So quite a few people, they don't say they're quitting. They say they've decided to change how they use YouTube, and now it's just going to be one video a week or one video a month. They've basically lost faith in the whole game, and they're not using the platform the way they used to. So look, radio was a circus back in the 1950s. Okay, and people got their hearts broken, and people got their teeth knocked out, and people got beat up, and people paid bribes. Believe it or not, back when radio was a really happening, important medium, there was organized crime involved, there were court cases, there were countersuits, and there was violence and defamation, and it was rough because people were passionate about radio. And for sure, you can lose faith in a particular DJ or in the management of a particular station, but that doesn't normally lead to you losing faith in radio itself as a medium, as a platform. When you look at any medium, when it was new and growing and influential and really mattered, I think most media go through this kind of Wild West period. And I've said before, I've given respect recently. I don't really think I'm really in the true Wild West period when people don't know what the rules are and people don't know what the risks are. I think guys like The Amazing Atheist and Onision, they were really the trailblazers, and they showed us all what the risks are. Someone's just mentioning Henya. So Henya's saying she's afraid for her life, etc., because of YouTube. Well, look at the guys like Amazing Atheist and Onision who really went through it, who've already been doxxed and defamed, and I think I was going to say dragged into court. I forget if those guys have actually had court cases also. But, the kind of drama and harassment and insults they've had to deal with, etc., etc. It is what it is, right? But here's what it isn't. For me, YouTube as a platform is fundamentally different than the Four Tops trying to get on the radio, right? It's fundamentally different from television or radio or the newspapers, or even in the distant past, I used to make money out of magazines, writing for magazines or editing books, all right? It's different because I'm actually doing this to make the world a better place. I'm actually doing this for ecology, for veganism as a cause, for the animals. And to some extent, yes, I sympathize with what other people are going through when they either close down their channels or have these crises or change how they play the game, etc., etc. But there's also an extent to which I don't. Who the fuck has suffered less for their political cause than me? Let's keep it all the way real. Do you think that civil rights activists back in the 1960s suffered less than I've suffered? Like, I've suffered. Okay, I've suffered. You've seen me come on and complain about misery in my life, etc. And we've seen all the other vegans on YouTube come on and talk about how hard their lives are and how people defaming them. It's true. It's totally true. Okay? But if you're doing this for the cause, if you're not out here pursuing a career in entertainment, if you're not like the Four Tops trying to get on the radio, if you're not like a rapper just trying to promote yourself on MTV or these days on YouTube, if it's not about your career, if it's actually about the cause, if it's not just entertainment, if it's not just music, if it's not just rap, if it's realer than rap, as we say, then you've got to see your suffering in that perspective. Okay? I remember I was once talking to this white girl in England. She was an idiot. I think she had a PhD, but she was still an idiot. I'm just keeping it real. You know, you have a PhD and still be a complete idiot. And she had just gone to a lecture given by this cult. I could name the cult. I'm not going to. This cult group that really played on social activist themes. Some of you will already guess which cult I'm talking about, but anyway. And, you know, they talked a lot about Gandhi and Martin Luther King and making the world a better place and what have you. And so she was repeating this shit. She just got indoctrinated into her from this cult. And I said to her, yes, thank you, Mickey. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We have to give the full name. MLK Jr. Sorry, it's a long name. We leave out the junior. Martin Luther King Jr. we're talking about here. And, you know, I looked her straight in the face and I said, you say you want to live like Martin Luther King Jr. Do you want to die like Martin Luther King Jr.? And she looked at me like I just arrived from Mars. And do you know how he died? Do you know why he was killed? Do you actually know what the stakes are in this game you're talking about playing? She wasn't even someone playing it. She was really just being manipulated by a cult group that wasn't even sincerely political. They're not even sincere political activists. There are similar aspects to some of the vegan groups that reach out to you by invoking these names of Gandhi and Martin Luther King and civil rights and the abolition of slavery and these big issues. If is that what we're really talking about? Are those really the stakes we're talking about? Like, you guys probably know I'm not a communist. If anything, I'm anti-communist. But like when you looked at the lives that communists lived, like, you know, my part of the world, 1960s, 1970s, you're talking about people who literally went to live in a cave with bombs dropping all around them in northern Vietnam on the, you know, Lao-Vietnamese border. I met people who lived in those caves when I was living in Laos. I met a woman who, as a child, the education she had was on a chalkboard in a fucking cave up by the border between Laos and Vietnam, okay, with bombs falling. And she witnessed people being shot to death by American-provided helicopters, etc. Okay, keeping it real. Keeping it real. Right? Yes, I do suffer. Okay, I do. People say unforgivable things about me on the internet. People defame me. People make up stories about me and my personal life and my legal case and my daughter. And also, complete strangers propose marriage to me and women try to hook up with me and offer to have sex with me. You know who you are. Some of you are in this chat room right now. Like, yeah, there are all kinds of absurdities. And real talk, there's sorrow. I've made friends, and I've had friends betray me and stab me in the back, and I've lost friends. Yet, I can sympathize with all of it. But if we're not thinking about this as a genre of entertainment, if we're thinking about this as a genre of if we're thinking about this as a form of activism, even if it's nascent, the first baby steps towards having effective, meaningful political activism, when you see it in that context, when you see it as suffering for the cause, who has suffered less? I am in the ultimate privileged position that I don't need to even interrupt my day to walk down the street to give this lecture standing at a podium. I don't even have to make my bed. I can just turn on the camera and talk, and I can reach an audience that cares and cares about what I care about and who share my aspirations to make the world a better place. I can do my little bit, and I can build those connections and work for this better tomorrow. So is it worth it? One by one, people are deciding whether or not it's worth it to them. But yes, I approach this as a political science problem. I approach vegan activism as a political movement. And for that reason, I see my personal sorrow and suffering just within a totally different sense of scale. Okay? Because any of these figures that people so lightly quote and invoke the names of, whatever, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, or whatever, what we're doing here on YouTube, this ain't shit. Yet.